Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're stepping way back in time to check out one of the most iconic, bizarre, and just utterly fascinating groups of animals to ever walk the Earth. I'm talking about the Ceratopsians. You probably know them best as the Horned Dinosaurs.
So, think you know everything about Triceratops and its giant, frilled relatives? Well, think again. Today, we're gonna bust some serious myths and uncover the hidden history of these incredible creatures. And we're doing it fast. We're counting down 10 highly surprising facts about horned dinosaurs that'll totally redefine how you view them. Let's dive right in.
Fact number 1, and this one completely flips the script on what a horned dinosaur actually looks like.
When you picture a horned dinosaur, you probably imagine this massive four-legged tank, right? But their ancient origins are actually surprisingly humble. The earliest known ceratopsian is a creature called yinlong. Discovered in the late Jurassic deposits of China, yinlong was tiny, and it was bipedal, meaning it walked on just two legs. It only measured about 120 centimeters long. No massive horns, no giant frills, just a small, fast-moving little plant eater navigating the ancient Asian forests.
All right, fact number 2. Let's talk about how these early ancestors actually managed to digest their dinner.
There's this wild contrast between their early dietary habits and what their descendants did later on. See, early species like yinlong didn't have heavy-duty chewing teeth. Instead, they literally relied on swallowing rocks. We actually have fossil evidence showing gastroliths, stomach stones, right inside their rib cages. They'd swallow these stones to mash up soft ferns down in their guts. That is a massive difference from the heavy-duty teeth that later, much larger ceratopsids ended up developing.
Which perfectly brings us to fact number 3, the absolute evolutionary leap in their chewing mechanics. Think of this as the Great Dental Revolution. The earliest horned dinosaurs had these simple, single-rooted teeth that took forever to replace. But as flowering plants evolved and their diets shifted to tougher, low-growing, really fibrous vegetation, their teeth adapted so fast. They developed double-rooted teeth that literally lock together, eventually forming these massive shear-cutting dental batteries. We're talking hundreds of teeth that replace themselves incredibly quickly. They basically evolved the most efficient plant processing jaws in all of dinosaur history.
Moving on to fact number 4. We're shifting focus from those specialized jaws all the way back to their tails.
I gotta say, this is one of my absolute favorite discoveries. Primitive ceratopsian relatives, like Pentaceratops, they weren't just boring, scaly reptiles. Brilliantly preserved fossils from China reveal a row of 16-centimeter-long tubular keratinized bristles running straight down the top of its tail. And get this, under ultraviolet light, those bristle-like structures fluoresce just like scales. It completely proves these early horned dinosaurs had some seriously strange, flashy coverings.
All right, fact number 5. Let's talk about the very things that give these dinosaurs their name, their iconic horns and frills.
We've kind of all been conditioned by the movies to think those giant facial horns and sweeping frills were strictly weapons, right? Like just for fighting off a T-Rex. But as paleontologist Scott D. Sampson points out in the animal kingdom, extravagant headpieces are almost always used for flirting and establishing social dominance. Think of it like a peacock's tail or a deer's antlers. So sure, while they could definitely be used for defense in a pinch, those wild, unique frills were really meant to show off to potential mates and totally intimidate rivals within their own species.
Which brings us to fact number 6. All of these adaptations, the crazy dental batteries, the flashy mating signals, they made them unbelievably successful.
Seriously, if you went back to North America right before the asteroid hit, you'd basically be swimming in horned dinosaurs. In some end Cretaceous deposits, ceratopsid fossils make up a staggering 61 to 71% of all the dinosaur fossils found. That is huge. They absolutely dominated their ecosystems, acting as the main mega-herbivores of their time. It's kind of like looking at the prehistoric equivalent of buffalo herds sweeping across the plains. And hey, speaking of buffalo herds, that brings us right to fact number 7, their incredibly complex social structures.
We found massive bone beds containing hundreds of individuals, which tells us for sure that these weren't just solitary wanderers. They formed huge, socially complex herds. The evidence actually suggests they undertook seasonal migrations, moving between coastal areas during the wet season and then heading to inland nesting grounds during the dry season. And even more fascinating, their delayed horn growth really implies they lived in ranked hierarchies based on age. So younger males literally had to wait years before their horns fully developed and they could finally braid.
Okay, fact number 8. We're pivoting a bit to look at a pretty hilarious historic mix-up involving their nesting habits.
So back in the 1920s, explorers in Mongolia found the very first dinosaur nests ever discovered. And because they were surrounded by fossils of a small horned dinosaur called Protoceratops, they just assumed the eggs belonged to them. They even found this theropod dinosaur skeleton right on top of a nest and named it Oviraptor, which literally translates to egg thief because they figured it was caught red-handed stealing Protoceratops eggs. But fast forward to the 1990s and high-tech scanning revealed the crazy truth. The embryos inside those eggs were actually oviraptors. The so-called thief was really just a dedicated parent tragically buried while protecting its own nest. Poor guy.
Well, speaking of paleontology mix-ups, fact number 9 covers one of the absolute biggest blunders from the early days of dinosaur hunting.
This one is just amazing. Back in 1887, legendary paleontologist O.C. Marsh, who was one of the most famous scientists of his era, was sent this massive fossilized horn. Now, the anatomy of these horned giants was so completely alien to early scientists that Marsh confidently declared the horn belonged to a massive extinct species of, drumroll, bison. No joke. It took years and finding more complete skulls for him to realize he was actually looking at a dinosaur that he later famously named the Triceratops.
And finally, fact number 10. This one ties the ultimate fate of the horned dinosaurs to the very shape of the Earth itself. Did you know that almost all of these massive, frilled ceratopsids evolved and thrived on an island continent called Laramida? It's true. During the late Cretaceous, North America was actually split perfectly in half by this massive, shallow ocean called the Western Interior Seaway. Laramida was the western half. It wasn't until just a few million years before their extinction that the seaway finally began to close. And get this, fossil evidence from Mississippi shows that ceratopsids were just barely beginning to cross over and disperse into eastern North America when time ran out.
When we step back and look at their whole history, their journey is just nothing short of miraculous. Starting from tiny, bipedal, stone-swallowing creatures like Yinlong, they underwent this incredibly rapid evolution. I mean, they bulked up in body size, they engineered literally the most complex chewing teeth the world had ever seen, and they just exploded into a dazzling array of horned and frilled variations. They became the absolute rulers of late Cretaceous North America. Which leaves us with one final, really provocative question. Knowing how fast they adapted, and knowing they were just starting to cross into brand new continents as that seaway dried up, if that asteroid had completely missed our planet 66 million years ago, how much further would these bizarre, rapidly evolving horned giants have gone? Would they have taken over the entire globe? It's definitely a fascinating question to ponder. Well, thanks for joining me on this explainer. I hope you learned something cool today, and as always, stay curious out there.